Are you controlling my slides there? Okay. All right, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and to talk to you on a topic that's really dear to my heart. The topic is getting ready for your next goal. Are you ready? And my presentation today, we seek to do two things. One, I want us to look at what are some of the real critical areas of knowledge that women need in order to rise in whatever it is they're doing. And then secondly, how do you make sure that on the journey to where it is you want to go, you have the right mindset to take you there, okay? So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Yawa Hansen-Quao, and I run an organization called the Leading Ladies Network. One of the things that Leading Ladies Network does, in addition to its vision of filling the future leadership pipeline, is we're committed to making sure that women have access to the body of knowledge that helps them be promoted. And what that means is that we do lots of different types of trainings on corporate etiquette and international protocol. I've been certified by the Protocol School of Washington in the US, which is not okay. You did me that clip of your own. For sure.
Is it a pocket?
I don't have a pocket. I don't have a pocket. Is that the second one? Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. Okay. So as I was saying, I'm also certified by the Protocol School of Washington to do corporate etiquette and international protocol courses. And that means I teach things like, when you meet someone for the first time, what's appropriate in terms of small talk? What is a proper handshake? What does it look like? Dining, when you're in an environment where you've got all this cutlery and all of these cups and plates, etc. How do you function? So I'm really excited about that because I do feel that that's a body of knowledge that's missing in Ghana, and especially because in Ghana, up until say 40, maybe even 50 years ago, women are relatively new entrants into the formalized Western-style office space. And therefore, there are many things that are hindering our progress besides technical ability. And that's what I seek to teach. So that's the background on which I'll be speaking tonight from my protocol experience. So why? Why am I interested in women? Why do I think that it's time or it's necessary for women to be equipped with a body of knowledge? Well, one, the trend shows, there's research that shows that women are advancing into more strategic roles, into more senior roles. There's also research that says that more and more women on boards, for example, means a better bottom line for companies. There's research that also is showing that economic indicators are showing that investments in women trickle down more than investments in men. So because of all of these things, women seem to be flavor of the month in many economic and development circles. But to a larger extent, if we want more and more women to be effective, we have to be deliberate about preparing them. So that's why I'm interested. And by the end of this presentation, I hope you'll be interested too. So imagine yourself at a networking event. And you know these networking events, everyone has a badge that says their name. How do you make sure that in any such situation you stand out as someone who's worth remembering? Someone whose name is worth keeping? Someone whose contact details are worth pocketing? Someone who is a rising star that you should watch and align yourself with? For many people, this is an area, especially for many women, this is an area of great difficulty. I myself used to have this as a problem, where I would just get flustered by the sheer numbers of people in a large space. And I'm finding, especially as Leading Ladies Network continues to run these type of corporate etiquette programs, that it this weakness is found even in senior women. I was the other day in a meeting with the MD of one of the largest banks in Ghana, and she said to me, I know I'm qualified. I know I'm good at what I do, but I cannot shake this feeling of being an imposter. I still, at my level, Yawa, at my level, I still go into these spaces where I have to speak, or I'm, networking with others, especially from other branches internationally, and I still have this feeling in my gut that I'm not supposed to be here, or secondly, that I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm an imposter, I'm a fraud. And that is a reality that many women face. If you read a lot of psychology books, they'll tell you that women tend to have internal battles, in addition to the technical know-how, in addition to knowing how stuff works and stuff needs to get done. We're battling these internal battles all the time. But the good news is, all of the things that you need to know about these type of interactions, they are learnable and practicable. And a lot of times, that takes the burden off of you as a woman who's engaged in any level. So, accessing this body of knowledge also helps you to stand out. Well, this is one of my favorite quotes from the children's author, Dr. Seuss. He says, "Why fit in when you were born to stand out?" Now, I see this every day, and this used to be my story as well. I know stuff. I'm smart, but I don't want anyone else to know it. Partly because I feel that constant sense of being a fraud. And many young girls face this as well. Leading Ladies Network has clubs at the junior high school level. And a lot of times we interview these girls and they'll tell us the same thing, that, why didn't you raise your hand and say the answer? Oh, if I did, they'll call me too new. If I did, they will label me as someone who is trying to get more attention than I deserve. And so for a lot of us, getting to our next role means being unafraid of standing out, unafraid of showing people what we've got inside of us, unafraid of flaunting our goodness, flaunting our skills, flaunting our abilities, because that's actually, in the professional world, how you get noticed. So instead of refusing to speak when you're at a board meeting or at a staff meeting, that's exactly when you need to speak. And in many ways, fear is such a great deceiver in that sense, because the things that you're often afraid of doing are the things you should be doing in order to get noticed. So I was counseling one of our Leading Ladies members who works for a bank. She was telling me how a lot of times when she goes to any of the staff meetings where there are managers, the unit heads, and sometimes even there's chief executives, they always ask, we want a junior member of staff to say the vote of thanks. And of course, all of the junior staff are always hiding. A few bold young men who raise their hand and say something. And she's watched how these young men are the ones who are rising, And I said, she asked me, I do just as much work as these men. I know even more than them. Because in fact, she was responsible for teaching some of them some of what they know. But her forward rise in that company has been limited because she's not taking advantage of these opportunities to shine. So raising your hand and asking a question, raising your hand and say, I would be the one to give the vote of thanks. Raising the hand and say, I will volunteer for that difficult project can make the difference between you staying where you are or you moving ahead. Now, let's now look at some ways of how practically you can get yourself ready. One of the main things is learn and apply business and protocol knowledge. I cannot belabor this point enough. No matter what industry you're in, no matter what career you also find yourself in, protocol and business etiquette knowledge will take you far. Because a lot of times, if I can use the analogy of a book, when you're in a bookstore and you're trying to pick out what book to read or what book to purchase, you often are moved to pick up the book first and foremost by what the cover looks like. So you'll find out, and I don't know if it's happened to you, but it's happened to me. Sometimes you'll pick up a book, the cover cover looked awesome, the summary looked amazing, but as you're reading the content, it's not really that hot. And likewise, business etiquette and protocol knowledge gives you that polish, that cover, that makes employers, business associates, and other people who may be interested in doing business with you, promoting you, or being involved in you to take a step closer. So of course, it's not the whole deal. It doesn't mean that with this knowledge you'll be able to accomplish everything, but it will give you the type of attention that you need to get yourself ready for your next position. Now, why is this important? The main reason it's important is because business matters never go out of style. I don't know if you've heard the quote that says, business is all about relationships. Your ability to relate to people, your ability to convince them to buy, your ability to tell them or convince them that you're the best person for the job, or that your product or your service demands their patronage. And all of that borders on how you make them feel. A lot of times people will forget what you said, but they won't forget how you made them feel, the kind of emotions that you elicited, the kind of feelings of trust or otherwise that they feel from you. And a lot of that is controlled by how we present ourselves. I often give the example of that. A couple of years ago, a mentor of mine told me something that was difficult to swallow. She said, Yawa, lighten up your face. I felt quite offended at first, but she explained. She says, you have a tendency of wearing your emotions on your face. And oftentimes, it can make people think you're unapproachable, arrogant, or facial expressions can be so misread that you've got to be deliberate about what kind of facial expression you're putting out there. And I generally am a serious person, so my default face kind of looks like, eyebrows furrowed and eyes squinted and intensely focused. But applying that has turned around the way people perceive me. I often take this poll when I walk into a room and I'm giving a presentation or a talk, especially if there are lots of people who don't know me. I ask, you've known me for 5 minutes now, what do you think of me? People raise their hand and tell me all sorts of things, and the majority of them are positive. Why? Because I take corporate etiquette and protocol knowledge seriously. It's about how do you create a proper first impression. How do you enter a room? And it can be little tweaks, like my learning to lighten my face, learning to smile at the end of sentences, learning to modulate my voice in a way that shows a bit more excitement and emotion than just the monotone kind of talking that I was accustomed to. It's little things like learning to walk a little faster, learning to wear appropriate clothing for the appropriate occasion, and learning that at every given time you are on stage. Now this body of knowledge opens women like us to new opportunities, because when you look the part is often offered to you. Now, it also helps you position yourself, both personally and professionally. A lot of times, professionally, it helps distinguish you from the competition. Especially in this era where there's so many people chasing the same jobs. Have you all heard of the Unemployed Graduates Association? How many of you are hoping to be members? None of you, right? And one of the ways to continue to be in demand is to make sure that you have these skills down pat. Now, oftentimes people refer to this skill set as soft skills. They're not technical, they have nothing to do with your job, they have nothing to do with your profession per se, but everything to do with how you are presented and how you make people feel. A lot of times in your personal life, you'll notice that it helps you to project a positive image. Right now, people will tell me, I think you're confident, I think you're professional. And I said, but I've not done any work for you. What about me makes you think you're professional? So it's a way to carry yourself. What does that mean? Now, little do they know that there are certain indicators that help you build a powerful presence. Things like posture, learning to stand up straight, learning to give people eye contact when you speak, learning to be deliberate in how you speak, taking pauses and continuing. Little tweaks on the things we do every day that help make a world of difference in how you are perceived. Now you'll find that in many Ivy League schools across the world, they're incorporating this type of knowledge into their curriculum. So there are courses like presidential rhetoric in some of the Ivy League schools that teaches these students how presidents talk. There are customs that each of these schools impart into their students, teaching them, for instance, Harvard students always sit in front. They always enter a room and always sit in front. And so likewise, these are what build a positive impression and a positive brand when it comes to projecting a positive image. Now, let's get into some of the nitty-gritties. If you're looking to move on to your next role, it may be helpful to adjust how you're seeing yourself. For a lot of us women, we see ourselves way smaller than we actually are. Now, a lot of times, if you find out that when you're introducing yourself and you use the word just, I'm just a nurse. I am just a photographer. I am just a graphic designer. These are the diminishing words that often creep into our vocabulary because we see ourselves smaller than we are. Now, sometimes the truth is we are small. Maybe you're just starting out your business.
Sorry, one video, you are very free to video. Wondering if you can try and see. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, this way we can see your lovely face.
Can you see me? I look dark from here. Is it better there? Is it better? I need to come forward? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So adjusting how we see ourselves is important, and especially because often we see ourselves smaller than we actually are. Now sometimes we actually are small. We may just be starting off our business. In fact, we may be unemployed. But there are special ways of saying these special things. So for instance, I'm in between jobs, as an alternative for saying I'm unemployed. Or I'm looking and exploring new opportunities, as a euphemistic way of saying that I'm unemployed. So take words like just, I'm just a teacher, I'm just an entrepreneur, and confidently introduce yourself when you meet people. Adjust to see yourself, because that helps you set the path for your next role. Now, another thing that we need to learn to do if we are ever going to move forward, and if we're ever going to be successful at positioning ourselves for our next role, is we need to learn how to establish boundaries. For a lot of us as women, that's a major challenge. Who belongs in your inner circle and who doesn't? A lot of times people get away with saying things to us that perhaps they should not be saying, with perceiving us or treating us a way that we shouldn't be treated. Now, oftentimes, we're partly to blame, because the truth is, how you present yourself determines how people respond to you. So in order for people to respond to you better, you need to position or present yourself better. And so establish your clear boundaries. Now, in this is where we talk about assertiveness. Have you heard the word assertiveness before? Does anybody know what that means? Assertiveness. How do you assert yourself? It means, how do you be firm but cordial? How do you tell someone in no uncertain terms that you don't like what they're doing or what they're saying, but still do so in a way that is unoffensive, but direct? It's a fine art that a lot of leaders haven't even mastered. I, for one, have worked for a boss before who, when you do something wrong, insults not just you, but your ancestors as well. So it's a fine art that a lot of people who are even in leadership don't get right. But learning how to establish boundary means learning how to tell people in the most uncertain, in no uncertain terms, that what they're doing or about what pleases you or what displeases you. And that takes some learning. So for any woman here who's looking for their next role, don't move on without learning how to assert yourself. How many of us can walk into our boss's office, for instance, and say, sir or ma'am, I've been working here for the last 4 years and I appreciate the opportunity. However, I do believe because of X, Y, and Z, I deserve a raise. And have a firm but pleasant look on your face. How many of us can do that? Just one of you. But a lot of times, that is where your next opportunity comes from. That's where your next opportunity comes from. Your willingness to raise your hand, not be afraid to firmly, but very politely state your case. And a lot of times we face all sorts of, and I'm sure all of my sisters in this room will understand what I mean, unwanted attention from men, or unwanted touching, unwarranted touching. We live in a space where sexual harassment laws don't seem to be functional. And so I often get a lot of women asking me this question, you know, in the office, there are these guys who put their arms around my waist and they're always doing things that I don't like. And I ask them, do you want to hear the truth? And if they say yes, then I give it to them straight. How you present yourself is how people are responding to you. So if you're dressing, you know the Nicki Minaj style, that's a song, right? You know, the dress, and I have nothing against her as an artiste or a person, but I am saying that if you're projecting a certain image, you often get that kind of feedback. So that means that if we want to be taken seriously for our next role, how we dress, how we appear, says a whole lot about where we're going. Have you ever heard the expression, dress for the job you want, not for the one you've got? The same applies. It's hard to establish boundaries. You'll find that when you do that, certain relationships just fall off. There are certain people that can't hang with you anymore. Okay? And I notice that the more I've tried to focus on protocol and etiquette and live that on a day-to-day basis, there's some people you just can't gel with anymore. Because often you're operating from a different space. So setting appropriate boundaries is important, especially for those of us who may be married and those of us who may have kids. Learning how to apportion and properly demarcate what is personal and what is professional. So for instance, this is not often said or written, but the general rule is you leave your personal life at home. So if you've had your quarrel with your husband, that does not need to be all over you when you get to work. When you've had an issue, a death in the family, etc., you want to try to make sure that those things don't creep into your work. Because often that gives the image of unpreparedness for the next role. Now, another area that affects a lot of women is how to develop and maintain an inspired vision. Now, you would think that for so many people who at least have succeeded in getting a job, that they would have had a sense of what it is they want or where it is they're going. But often many of us stumble into the things we're doing. How many of you planned to be where you are now? Can I see by hand? Okay. But majority of us also stumbled. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I am saying there's a lot to be said for being deliberate about the choices you make. In a lot of our sessions in our clubs for graduating seniors from university, we do a session that asks 3 questions. Where do you want to be in the next 5 years? And honestly, this is one of the hardest workshop sessions for many of our. It's the first time in their lives they're being asked to think about what they want to do for themselves. Because when you interrogate, they're doing the course they're doing mainly because their father said it would be a good choice. They are in the program they are, or in the school they're in, or choosing the career path they're choosing because someone else said that would be good for you. So a lot of us, it doesn't happen early enough for us to start thinking deliberately about who we are and what we want to do with our own lives. So as you interrogate, what do you need to do in order to get to your next role? You've got to think up a plan, have a vision. For me, it has evolved over time, and it will, and it can. But at any point in time, I have a clear sense of what I want to do and where I want to be. And I think it's even more important for us as women, because we've got childbirthing responsibilities, especially if you're in marriage. And how many of us would have the confidence to negotiate with our partners about when we will have kids? When I tell the story that my husband and I agreed at the beginning of the marriage that we would not have kids for 5 years, most women open their mouths in shock. But remember what I said earlier in the earlier slide about assertiveness? But I could say that because I had a sense of where I wanted to go. That I knew I wanted to start this organization, and I wanted to, if I was going to have a child, I wanted to have as much time for that child. And I didn't think it would be possible. My husband and I agreed, and so that's what we did. So often, having a vision helps you plan the now. It helps you understand that, this guy that I'm dating, with where I want to go, can he fit? For a lot of women, they are not maximizing their full potential because they don't have inspired visions. So you cannot think about moving to your next role, your next level, without thinking, what do you want that space to look like? It could be as simple as a sentence. For mine, in the next 5 years, and this was my 2010 vision, that by 2015, I no longer want to be the founding director of my organization. I want to recruit a founding director and focus my time on speaking and training. And I'm well on the way to that. Now, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but having a sense of what you want to do helps you take major decisions. It helps me weigh what type of things I want to be engaged in, because I weigh it based on whether it aligns to that vision. Another area that we need to focus on is establishing a healthy work and life rhythm. Notice I haven't used the word balance, because I feel balance is elusive, but rhythm seems more of a doable thing. For all of us who are music lovers, you know how rhythms go, right? You can have one beat juxtaposed against another beat, and it's all working together in a funky psychedelic harmony. And so I like to see my life in terms of rhythm. You may have a lot going on, but as long as they complement each other well, you've got a good beat. So for us as women, we've got to think, how do we make sure that we're living a life that's full and well blended and in good rhythm that we can dance to? So that may mean things like asking yourself the question, these clubs that I'm in, this association that I'm in, what is the benefit in relation to my long-term vision? It may mean you'll take up a hobby as opposed to joining another organization. It may mean you'll use some time to enhance your knowledge in a certain area. For me, I've been on a 13-year-long public speaking journey that I want to be better as a public speaker. So I continue every year to do something that helps to improve that. And all because I want a good balance between how I appear publicly and privately, and I find that regardless of whatever profession that I may choose to be in, this skill set will serve me well. So likewise, you've got to think also, what are the personal things? Your relationships, your family, where do they weigh for you at every season of life? Because a lot of times you may be, especially when I was in startup mode with my organization, or should have, but now I'm in a different space, and now the rhythm on that has picked up as opposed to other things. And now I'm a mother, and so the rhythm on other things have also dropped. So I don't say yes to all the opportunities that I used to say yes to anymore, because I want to give time to family. So establishing an appropriate rhythm is important, because as you move on to your next level, you want to make sure that, one, you've got everything it takes to handle it. For some of us, our family becomes our support system. I don't know how I would be functioning in this season of life if I didn't have my mother available to look after my child. So you may need to think, in the next 5 years, I want to have kids. So that estranged relationship I have with my mom, I need to start working on it. For those of us who may be thinking, well, in the next 2.5 years, I would like to be married. So I may need to not be working till 1 a.m. every night so that I can actually date. So all of these help feed into what decisions you take now. Because your next role, for some of us, it's a bigger position in our existing organization. For some of us, it's the boldness to just say, hey, I quit and I'm starting my own thing. Whatever that looks like for you, a healthy work and life rhythm is necessary. The other thing is, you've got to learn how to defeat the disease to please. Now, a lot of us have been conditioned in such a way that we grew up thinking that to be liked and to be good is the most important thing in the world. But oftentimes it affects us from being great. It affects us from giving our all to becoming the best that we can be. So I often say this, and excuse my French, but sometimes you have to be okay with being a bitch. Being the one that nobody likes right now. Being the one that everybody's talking about right now. Being the one that everyone's thinking, who are you, who do you think you are, etc., etc. Because taking the next level, getting yourself to the next level means you've got to have a boldness. A boldness that some people may find presumptuous. Some people may think that you are. You and I came from the same background, the same. So you need to start thinking about, how do I defeat this innate need in me to please everybody, to be in everyone's good books. And that may mean parents. That may mean friends and siblings. That may mean people that you've grown up loving and respecting. But oftentimes what you'll find is that getting to your next level means that you've got to break yourself of certain associations. And one of the examples that I like to give comes from Scripture. Now, pardon me for those of you who aren't Christians, but in the Scripture there's a story told about Jesus. Well, Jesus knew he was here to die on a cross, and that was his ultimate goal. And his good friend and disciple, Peter, comes and rubs his back and says, no, let it be far from you. That should never happen to you. I mean, after all, And on the surface of things, that would have looked like, the consolation of a good friend. The consolation of someone who loves me, respects me, and wants my good. But because Jesus had an ulterior motive, he had his eyes fixed on a particular vision, he saw it for what it was. It was a distraction. It was the voice of opposition to his mission statement. And so he shut him down right there and then. Often we lack that boldness as women to distance or confront. I have a slide about that, so let me not get into that. But to really address people or situations that are holding us back from fulfilling our vision. And you cannot move far if you don't defeat them. I would disagree with you that not everyone can be assertive. I think everyone can. There are differences between people's character. So there are some of us who are more introverted, and there's some of us who are extroverted. So I will concede that assertiveness may come easier for some people because they're extroverted than those who are introverted. But assertiveness is something that everyone can learn. And it may mean that you may not be as vocal or upfront, you may go about the tactics differently, but it is a skill set that everyone can and should learn. You'll find it useful not just in work, but in personal life. It makes your arguing better. People say that women often, we get emotional, our arguments are all over the place. But when you learn how to assert yourself, you can say, you know, honey, when you do this, it really affects me because X, Y, and Z. So what I find is that it helps you to synthesize your thinking and judge what you are saying on certain criteria. Is it firm? Is it direct? And is it still yet cordial? And then it also, when we do assertiveness training at Leading Ladies Network, so maybe want to go for it.
So it's like I'm assertive, but the thing is, like the model says that you know, like how some people go to a shop and maybe it doesn't happen so often here, but in this case, and people approach you or like people come to buy stuff from me, and I can just tell them you gotta do this, you have to buy this, this is gonna work for you. Go buy it, but the next moment they go home and they're not happy with it just because they just have to say yes because that was So those kind of people are not assertive. So like how so I guess like how do you develop assertiveness?
So with that example, knowing how to assert yourself delivers you from such situations. Meaning, if you can say, oh, thank you very much for the offer, but I am not interested at this time, thank you, and still smile and walk away. It's learning how to do that that empowers you to handle those situations better. And part of how you do it is by learning it. And I'm saying all of these things we teach. And so it's knowing what the body language is, knowing what does assertive eye contact look like, for instance. A lot of us have difficulty looking in people's faces. One of the major issues, and I talk to HR people all the time, for instance, when they're interviewing women, they said every time, Yawa, without fail, every time we ask the salary question, women look away and laugh. They said, okay, so the interview is going well, she's answered, check, 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 all the boxes. Then they said, so how much of a salary are you expecting? Women faltered. They said, oh, and look away. I said, why? I said, when they get to that part about how much we are worth, we often do not assert ourselves the way we should. It may be cultural as well, and I started off by saying we grew up in a space that teaches us good means don't confront, good means be quiet most of the time, good means go with the flow even if you're offended. And that does often affect us. And that's why assertiveness has to be learned. And it's not even for people who are in third world countries. In many big companies abroad, it is a required training that people have to go through. So you take the assertiveness training class, especially for sales roles, that when someone is giving you grief, how do you assert, let's say you have an appointment with someone and his gatekeeper, the secretary or somebody is opposing you, how do you be firm but direct but kind at the same time? It all seems like conflicting things, but all of this is necessary because at the end of the day, our professional lives and our personal lives are all built on relationships. And this body of knowledge opens you up to how to best manage those relationships for mutual benefit. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, I want
Good.
to say something.
Go ahead.
Just to add to what she was saying, in the beginning you mentioned something like you should dress up for the kind of job you're looking for. So definitely, if you're kind of looking at yourself by getting somewhere, you know the kind of vision you have. You know you need to learn to be assertive because of that vision, like what you want to do. So you have to make every effort to really learn it because you are doing it with the vision that you have. So it's like the same way we're learning to dress professionally because you know how you want people to perceive.
Well said. You're obviously listening. And let me add to that as well, especially when it comes to the appearance part. There are all sorts of influences, and that's the truth. Obviously, we're influenced by two things. On the one hand, there's celebrity. So we were talking about Idris Elba earlier. We're talking about all of the celebrities in Hollywood and how they dress and how they act and how they do. And then there's royalty, and they are on different extremes. When it comes to the world of polish and professionalism, you want to sway toward the side of royalty. For instance, did you know a business suit was never designed to be tight? You go to a lot of the banks, all of the girls, the women are, Did you know that stilettos, for instance, were never meant for office? That a heel of no more than 4 inches is what's appropriate for the workplace. And I was doing a training at one of the telcos. There's an HR director for one of the telcos who was in that class. She stopped me and said she needed to share this example. She said the week before, her CEO had asked her to give him a short list of women. You know, now a lot of companies are doing quotas. They want to make sure there's X number of women in leadership roles. So do a short list of women that he could promote to a job that had just opened up. She comes with a list of 7 names. And she's confident, I mean, she's the HR director, she knows all of these people's progress reports, etc. So she's pretty confident that, you know, this is a power list. The CEO goes through the list, says, no, this one, the way she dresses, no. This one, she's always walking like a giraffe. She wears stilettos and walks around the office like a giraffe. What kind of? Because the employer is thinking of your presentability. That when a client comes, can he send you somewhere to represent him? Can he safely know that you will hold your own with the client? Can he know that you will represent the air of the business as opposed to hypersexuality? And that's often where we're making mistakes. There's so much cleavage being shown. Skirts are way shorter than they should be. Coats and suits are tighter than they should be, all because we're copying celebrity as opposed to royalty. So a lot of times, it's about being oriented to this. And you'll find, now that I'm saying this, the next time you watch TV, you watch powerful women who are powerful because of position or in politics or business, and watch how they dress and how their suiting is, and compare that to celebrities. And so because most of us as young people, what's in our face every day is celebrity, we often copy that. So the next point is, do not fear confrontation. Now this is also an area where many of us, and this used to be a major area for me. I remember one of my many mentors told me that, look, if you don't get over this your non-confrontation thing, I will stop mentoring you. And it's such a major thing for many of us. And I know, and if you'll be honest with yourself, how many of us have someone we don't talk to, but the person doesn't know why we're not talking to them? And all the hands have gone up. Women are classically known for holding a grudge and not actually dealing with the issue. I don't talk to her. And she knows what she did. Are you sure? Are you sure she knows what she did? Or he knows, or they know what they did? A lot of times, our inability to confront when things go wrong means, do you know in the long term what it means? It means we can't be trusted. It presents us in a duplicitous manner. Because often, we badmouth or we talk about some of these people and word gets around. So it's part of how we sabotage our own careers, by not confronting. By not being able to say, Pedal, you know, the other day when we were at this thing, I really didn't like what you said. I really felt offended because, of course, I mean, I was really trying to sell my business, and that comment really made these people uninterested. So please, in the future, this is for that kind of thing. Pedal knows exactly what she's done that I don't like. I've said it in a way that's firm, it's direct, but it's not offensive. Well, except for my offensive.
No.
All right. So assertive. You see how all of these tie in. You learn how to assert yourself, and it helps you in order to learn how to confront. Learning how to present yourself helps you to design that vision of what your future will be. All of these are interrelated, and they feed into helping us be ready for our next role. Because not confronting means living with guilt and resentment and having enemies in all sorts of places. And that, because business is all about relationships, that will one day come and bite you in a wrong place. Now, my last point about getting on to your next role, the better role, the next big job, or the next big opportunity is be strategic about who's in your inner circle. How many of you in this room have mentors? Someone that you can say is my mentor. Great. You know, right now I'm appreciating also the value of peer mentorship. People of my age group. Because, you know, sometimes when you've got a mentor who's a little older than you, their insights are useful, no doubt. But sometimes they also are out of touch with our generational realities. And so I'm finding that having peer mentors, people of my own age that I can call and say, you know something, you know, let me bounce something off of you. This is happening, this is one thing you're doing, what do you think? Has saved me from a lot of ill as well. So don't think that mentors have to be 50 and 60 and successful. Some of my peer mentors, we are all on the way in many respects. But because they're in a different space, they have a different perspective that can and often does prove useful. So your inner circle, who are those who understand what your struggles are? Who are those that you're letting in about what's even wrong about you? So for instance, with one of my mentors, the whole confrontation issue. You know, I had a major falling out with someone a year and a half ago. And I told her the whole situation, and you know, I practice withdrawal all the time. I just will cut you out of my life and move on. And you know, she had been talking to me about this for a long time, that you know what, and she had a personal story. She said she was in university with this, you know, she had a best friend, and as the story goes, a guy got between them, and she stole her best friend's boyfriend, basically. And she's married to that best friend's boyfriend right now. The story goes that one day she had applied, she runs a business, she had applied for a huge, major contract. And guess who's sitting as the decision maker on that contract? Her best friend from years ago. And she said, no one has to tell you why you did not get the job. But even if you fell in love with the guy you're married and all, she wishes that she had made some sort of attempt at confronting the issue. That, you know, I'm sorry. This and this, I didn't mean to do this, I didn't mean to do that. If at least they were terms. She said, Yawa, I tell you, these things go around and they come back when you least expect it. And that delivered me of that issue. And so now this person I fell out with, we have a better relationship. We're not tight and buddy-buddy. And my mentor was clear. She said, don't ever expect to be buddies with everyone at all times. But make sure that you've got enough good capital out there and goodwill that if ever you were troubled and needed to pick up the phone, that you could. So your inner circle becomes important because often it's your inner circle that gets you jobs. Often a lot of the training work that I do or the consulting work that I do comes from my inner circle. It comes from friends and acquaintances, people who say, hey, Yawa's doing this thing now, and why don't you get your company to do this as well? So it creates value. It's a strategic way of creating value. It seems that men seem to understand and practice this better than we do as women. But the earlier rather, that we start to do this, and the better we become well-versed at doing it, I believe it can really transform things for us as women. The other thing about your inner circle is how do you make sure that you continue to create value for each other? So for instance, if I'm something or an opportunity that I want for myself, I've made it a general rule to share it among my friends who may also be interested. Said, hey, I've discovered that this thing is there, what not, etc., etc. Why don't you try it as well? And we may all be applying for the same thing. We may all be looking for the same opportunity. But it changes the mix when you present yourself in that way. Because it means I'm not here to compete with you. And often, when you unearth what is at the heart of a lot of ill between women, it's that competition. It's, oh, she's got this and I don't have that. She did that and I haven't done that, especially in this Facebook generation, where we can amplify our achievements quickly. You know, I can take a selfie with Obama, y'all, and be like, I am so hot, you know, it's me, y'all. I can, and I've had to find, and I found that out in my own life. I mean, I've had a lot of great opportunities come my way. But, you know, when you put yourself in other people's shoes and say, you know, how must people be feeling about me? Especially because these are things that they could have had for themselves. I'm finding that, and that's what we call emotional intelligence. Understanding that, look, some people don't set out to hate you, but you have helped them to hate you. You have helped them to hate you by how you flaunt your successes in their face and how you go on and on about this and that. So it's like sitting with a friend who's been trying for years to have a baby and talking about your baby. It's just insensitive, it gets you nowhere, and at the end of the day, you may be planting the seeds for your own demise, the demise of that relationship. So part of the inner circle mentality is learning and understanding emotional intelligence. Understanding that, you know what, yes, I am part of X, Y, and Z organization. I do have this feather in my cap, but is it necessary to really say or promote right now? You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, these are the things that alienate, as opposed to get people to draw close to you. So I talked earlier about the body of knowledge about corporate etiquette and international protocol. So I just wanted to run through some of the course offerings that our organization does as well, in case this is of interest to any of you. One of the courses we do is called Outclass the Competition. And these are some of the topics that are there. And the focus of this class, or this seminar, really is to help introduce people to business etiquettes in contemporary business right now. A lot of things have evolved, a lot of things have changed. Did you, for instance, know that there's a protocol about giving and receiving business cards?
Yeah.
Did you know that there's a protocol of how you introduce people? And a lot of people don't really, you know, you'll be forgiven for not knowing, but you will put yourself in a different category when you do know. And I've seen this happen to me on so many levels. I'm privileged to be a member of the World Economic Forum community, and I also sit on one of their boards. And in that board capacity, oh my, and I'm not saying this to say, oh, check me out, but I am saying this to say that that has presented me an opportunity to be up front, close, and personal with presidents, with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, with oh my Lord, everyone who is somehow connected to the community. And I have found that what actually opened the door to that opportunity were these social graces. My ability to know what to say and what not to say, to know what is appropriate and inappropriate conversation, to understand how to do the fine dining thing. What is American style dining? What is continental style dining? When you get up to speak, what are some of the protocols around how you do that? How do you compose a toast? And I'm finding that the higher and higher up you go in the business world or in the professional world, alcohol plays a huge role. So even though I don't drink, I've learned vintages of wine, just so I can put in a statement to show that I'm not drinking by choice, not that I don't know what it is. Little things like that that show that you know a little thing or two about a thing or two. Because it presents you with such major opportunities. And I've personally never had to apply for a job before. Every job that I've worked at, and I have worked quite considerably, it's always been a word of mouth thing. And honestly, one of the jobs I did was in the tourism industry. I knew nothing about tourism. In fact, I was working under people who had degrees in tourism or whatnot. But I ended up, before I left the company, I was basically number 2. All because of what you don't know, you can Google. But not everybody knows these social graces. Not everyone knows how to talk, you know. Even it helps you in dealing with angry clients. So all of these things about how to deal with people, really, all of these are soft skills, people skills. How do you put people at ease? How do you create a positive impression that people want to do business with you? And these make the difference and distinguishes you from the other hundreds of graduates out there. So that none of you ever have to be members of the Unemployed Graduates Association of Ghana. But you can always distinguish yourself because you will always find that there are opportunities available for such people. Another class that we do has to do with succeeding in the international arena. There are different types of protocol that surround dealing with clients from different parts of the world. I was coaching one of my participants in one of my courses who has her own business. She said, after doing this course, I understand why I lost the deal. She said she had this American businesswoman that she was dealing with. And you know how in Ghana we very easily say, hey, put on, hey, you're looking fat. We say that very easily. Little does she know that to an American businesswoman, that is the most offensive thing you could ever say. So she said they were having one meeting. She had brought the products. She was asked to bring product samples and a draft of the agreement. So they were at the point of even signing the agreement. And she saw the woman after a few months and said, hey, you've put on, oh. And the woman said, I beg your pardon, because she didn't understand the whole, you've put on, that's very Ghanaian. And she said, oh, I said, and she said, this is exactly what I did. Yawa, I said, you've become big, Papa. She said the woman immediately turned red. And then she said, okay, she has to check a few things with her partners before she can sign, and that was it. One wrong word at the wrong time just killed that business opportunity. And I know that's an extreme example, but there are so many other mistakes that maybe we're making and we don't even know. Many of us as women, one of the complaints is that we don't give good handshakes. Very weak handshakes, lifeless handshakes. So we teach these things. What is an appropriate handshake? Especially cross-culturally. There are different cultures that do the kissing culture, understanding which cultures do that and which cultures don't. For me, that was a rude awakening when I first spent some time in Italy. The first person coming close to my face, I withdrew myself so considerably because I honestly had no clue. So all of these save us from the missteps that often kill opportunity. The last and final course that we offer is called Dine Like a Diplomat. Now this focuses on fine dining. And there are HR books now that say that you can learn everything you need to learn about a person by the way they eat. And increasingly, employers are taking prospective applicants or prospective employees out to lunch. And your interview, it looks like you're just having a chat. It looks like you're just having, and they're watching. I remember one of also another participant in one of our courses, who's a manager of a big bank here. He said this is what they've started doing now. They have all of these shortlisted people, about 50 of them. They take them into a conference room surrounded by glass just like this. You know the type of glass that you can see into, but when you're looking at it, you only see your reflection. That's the kind of glass that they have. So they're sitting behind that glass watching how they interact. So in the conference room, there's tea, there's pastries, and they tell you, make yourself comfortable, we will be with you shortly. And then they watch. They watch those who go pick the bread, slime the butter, pop a cup of tea and drink slowly. They watch those who, sit on the sidelines and wait to be offered something. And so those who take the step and say, okay, these are initiative people. They take the initiative. They're not waiting to be served. They're up and serving. They see those who are team players. They ask, oh, can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I pass you? They look at those the natural leaders. You get it. Then they'll come and tell 25 of them, I'm sorry, you can go, okay? You can go. You can go. Then they take the 25 into the next room. That group is left with no instruction. They sit them down for about 30 minutes. They want to see which one out of that will get up and ask for direction, will get up and ask for insights about what's going on and what's this is probably the natural leader. This is probably the one, people are always looking for direction, looking for people who take charge. And they find that even in that small group of 25, there's someone who's presenting themselves with power and authority that they say, oh, you go. Inevitably, people will get restless. And inevitably, they will have to find someone to say, oh, why don't you go to reception and ask? Maybe they've forgotten that they asked them to wait in this conference room. Maybe they've asked us. And they do 4 sets of that to pick 2 people to work in the organization. So again, their degrees simply got them the interview. It only got their foot in the door. But what selected them were these skills. So dining, how well they handled food. And the final level of the conversation or the interview was a lunch with 5 of the finalists. And then that's where they chose the best 2 out of. Someone who can handle a meal and proper conversation without looking unsightly. Because the job meant that you'll be whining and dining clients. Take them out to lunch and discuss their account. You take them out to different places and you know, part of the job meant that you needed to be good. And it had advancement prospects. So they needed to be sure about who they were bringing. So this may sound very remote, but actually it's happening right now in Ghana. This is a company here in Ghana. So I'm passionate about this body of knowledge because for anyone moving on to their next role, how you get to it first and foremost starts here, at least in my opinion. So generally, these are the 7 areas that I think we need to focus on in order to move on to our next role. I hope you've enjoyed it and you've learned a bit. And I hope that you've got lots and lots of insights that will help you no matter what you decide to do, personally or professionally. Thank you. So if there are any questions, or I'm happy to take them.
As iSpace, we generally have as iSpace, we generally have a lot of female entrepreneurs work here. And again, like you're saying, some of them might be green around the same edges and everything else. And so your courses, is it a case of we can bring like 6, 7 people to your class specifically, and then they say, okay, yeah, we can design a course to try to chisel out all of those?
We do both custom and open enrollment courses. So there are some companies that come to us, for instance, and say, these are the issues we're having, and we train for both men and women, and this is what, you know, to customize something to us for that. Oftentimes, our business etiquette, the first program that I talked about, the Outclass competition, is a day-long program that is kind of a merge between the business etiquette and the dine like a diplomat. So it combines everything. So that's our most popular sign-up class. So either way, we're open to that discussion.
So I think that's something that is very interesting as well. So that's that.
Okay, sure. And I think the Google entrepreneurs, I did a session with them. It wasn't really a practical session, but it was more just kind of waking them up, yeah, to that.
Yeah, 44. Thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Any more questions? You learned a lot. Okay, so let me ask you, what did you learn?
I learned more about adjusting yourself, not saying just describing yourself and what you do. And I really like it because, but my organization as the Children's Arts Center, I started in January, but was doing more community workshops since last year. And when you just said that, I realized that anytime people ask me, what do you do? How long have you been doing? I say, oh, just started.
You see? And often, and I used to do that when I started leading ladies. Do you know what mine was even worse. I say, I used to work, and I would quote the name of my last employer. I would say, I used to work for X company, but, and all of those were negative, used to be and but. One of my peer mentors, it was actually one of my peers, who said, why do you keep saying that? You're the director of a women's leadership organization. That is a big deal. So it just took some reframing for me to, whoa, I was doing this to myself as well. So I understand that very well. Often we diminish immediately, and we think it's cool to be modest. We don't want people to think too much of us, but often it prevents people from benefiting from us the way they want us. All right, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Actually, let me ask you a question. Because I am trying to, with the way I don't have that so much issues where I'm approaching people, talking to people, and I'm not one of those people that when somebody says something negative to me, I kind of internalize it and everything else. So I find people kind of find me to gather, really, or harsh, or brutal, and I'm thinking, so I'm just not internalizing what it is you saying to you. And so how do I?
So often there's a disconnect between what you think you're saying with your body and your gestures and what people are perceiving. So I often say people are giving you that as feedback, take it. And look at ways, because I didn't know I was giving the impression of too known and whatnot, because I have a serious face. When I'm serious about something, I just furrow and, just being deliberate about tempering some of those rough edges. I remember, and this has informed a lot of, we have a curriculum for women in presentation and speaking, or women in words. And a lot of it is based on mirror play as well. Because everyone knows what a good speech looks like. Likewise, everyone knows what an approachable person looks like. So oftentimes you can self-correct. So if it means just 10 minutes after you finish brushing your teeth, if you have a mirror over your sink, just spend a few minutes and just, play out different scenarios. How does this look on me? How does this space look on me? And part of what it does for you, it helps you get, part of, at least for women, part of what the hindrances are, as I'm talking, I'm wondering how I'm being perceived. I'm wondering whether people can see this pimple that is on my nose. I'm wondering whether my hair is okay. I'm wondering a lot of things. And so that also helps us get comfort with what our faces look like, with how we may be perceived. And so when you're over that as a hurdle, you can focus on the message.
Okay.
That's good idea.
I mean, again, it's just what you're saying is 100% correct, because I'm trying to do that, and always have to kind of self-correct myself. But always have the mentality. It's not so much about proving them wrong, but it's about proving me rather than the other way around. But then again, it's about, like you said, if people say that, then I have to.
Then it's feedback. And especially because the more positively you're perceived, the more likely people are going to want to do stuff for you. The more likely, So there are a lot of nasty people in the world that people just don't know they're nasty because they've got this great public persona. They smile. They say, "Hey, boss, oh, how old you think I'm sorry." They're even dramatic, almost theatrical. But it's a learned way of being that has great dividend. It pays great dividend.
Anyway, so thank you very much, Yawa,
It's been my pleasure.
for speaking to us. Video will be available. Slideshow will break it down. Thank you so much. We've all learned
I really did
so much.
And I wanted that.
Well, pedal has to. Feel free to have it. Yeah. Feel free to have it.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to nice.
Always. Always. Okay. I'm going to.
Thank you. Thank you for watching Women in Tech. We'll see you next month.